great pleasure to be here. My first trip to India, and I find myself on the same panel as a colleague from Malaysia. So the world is indeed a much smaller place perhaps than we realize. My name's Chris Hill. Thank you very much for the introduction. I've been based in Malaysia for almost 8 years, and I work for a British university in a foreign context. So what I'm going to try and talk about today is a slightly more macro approach to the previous speaker, and look at the context and value set of international higher education. I'm going to use Nottingham as an example in places simply because that's where I'm based and therefore I have a knowledge of that. But I'm going to try and relate it to a much broader picture, and hopefully that will be of some use or interest. To start, I'm very interested in a series of questions which I think have been touched on earlier this morning. And we've heard a lot of statistics about the need for expansion of higher education. We've heard statistics about the growth in the student market. We've heard about the statistics about the sheer need for employability and the need for graduates. And what I think is curious sometimes is that we don't necessarily ask ourselves what's our purpose in higher education. With the growth in demand of students comes the growth in demand of institutions. Are these institutions fit for purpose? What are we actually doing? What are our graduates being taught? Are they fit for? And this comes down to a debate. Are they fit for employability or simply for employment? And I think that was touched on one of the earlier speakers in the session. Are we talking about students with transferable skills fit for the global economy? Are we simply talking about moving them binary from student to employee? And I think that's a question that we need to talk about, and certainly one Taylor's is addressing with the types of teaching that is going on. I work for an international university, so internationalization is clearly at the heart of what we do. We are Britain's global university, however you choose to define that. And that, for us, brings up a lot of questions about context. It brings up questions about collaboration. And again, the call from one of the previous speakers about building a global network for collaboration, I think this is absolutely critical. But I would argue these collaborations need to be fit for purpose, and they need to be understood to try and move away from often the imbalance of power dynamic that we see in international education. One of the questions I think we face, and this is very heartening to see colleagues at Taylor's engaging with the same and tackling the same challenges, is this last question on the slide: how do we inspire our students? How do we inspire our staff? How do we inspire ourselves? What is our goal for development? What's the purpose of what we're trying to do? It shouldn't just be about showing up and standing in front of a class and talking out loud. There needs to be engagement. There needs to be a view on what happens to the students when they graduate, what happens to the academic staff. And that's a very, very key issue. My undergraduate degree was classics, so I tried to infiltrate a classical quote into most of my presentations. Some of you may already know this one by Juvenal. In English, who will watch the watchers? And I think consistency, particularly in international education, when there is no international governing board of quality, there are national quality assurance agencies to be sure, but particularly in the Malaysian case where international education was an absolute necessity because of degree delivery and degree quality, there was a lack of regulation, then there was an over-regulation, and now there's a sensible regulation. And I think there's a responsibility within educational providers, within governments, to ensure that we are fit for purpose, that we are transparent, that we are doing what it is that we say we're supposed to be doing. So for us in particular at the University of Nottingham, and I think increasingly as international collaboration becomes the norm, we're looking at questions such as how do we embed an international dimension in all academic programs. You'll often hear universities say, well, we have 70 different nationalities of students, therefore we're very international. Well, we have 80, so we must be more international than you. We also know that international students tend to congregate in national or ethnic groups. And so a simple collection of nationalities does not make a university or an educational degree experience international. Student mobility helps, international academic staff help, but when we're talking about curriculum development, when we're talking about employability agenda, when we're talking about transferable skills, these are all critical issues. Many of these other issues are, again, very, very broad and have been covered by Taylor's. And because we've got two other speakers and I want to make sure I finish on time, I'm going to sort of jump through these.